Hey y'all, it's Makin. Welcome back to the channel. Glad y'all are here today. Come spend some time with me today in the kitchen. So we processed our first hog this past weekend, and so I've got a little meat to work up today. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to be able to show a lot of that on video. Here where we live is very rural. A lot of people still do things the old-timey way. So yes, we still do the old-fashioned hog processing, for lack of better words. And it's a lot of old-timers there, a lot of neighbors helping neighbors. Anybody with pigs within a 5-mile radius of here, we all work together. So out of respect for them, we really don't do a lot of filming down there. But on today's list, I'm going to be making my first batch of lard of the year. I'm going to show y'all how I do that. I'm going to be canning some tenderloin, and tonight for supper we're going to be having some chicken stew. So what I use to make my lard is what they call leaf fat, L-E-A-F fat. That is the fat that's around the kidneys and on the around the internals of the hog. You can make lard out of any piece of fat from that pig in the same way that I'm going to show you today. What I have heard is leaf fat makes the purest lard with the least smell. I mean, I can't speak to that for experience. I always make mine using leaf fat. I have occasionally chunked up some of the other fat from the pig and put in with my lard, but I've never done one with leaf fat and one with the other. So that's just what I've heard. But I've been making lard for many, many years. If you've been following us for any amount of time, you know that we use a lot of lard. I don't buy any seed oils or anything like that. Anything that calls for oil or I need oil for, it is usually melted lard or it's butter. So let's get started on this. I'm going to put just enough water in the bottom of my pot just to cover the bottom. You don't have to do that, but it keeps it from sticking. And that water will cook out of it, no more than you're going to put in there. It will cook out of it. And I'll show you, this is some lard I made last year. And I want y'all to see just how beautiful and white that is. And I made this just how I'm going to show y'all how I'm going to make it today. Yep, not much at all. So you're going to want it in chunks about that big. You can do a little bit bigger, but that's about how I do it there. See, there's another little one. A lot of people like to run it through a grinder. That's all well and good. That's totally up to you. But the way that I look at it now here, and I've actually done it that way one time before, a very long time ago, and I didn't see that it really cooked down that much faster. May have just been me. But I could stand here and I can cube this up like you're going to see me do. Or I could take the time and I could push it through a grinder, have to turn around and clean that grinder with all this greasy fat that's run through it, and then I'll be ready for my lard. So what little bit of time it may cut off grinding it, I don't see that it's worth it having to clean up a grinder. So we're just going to cut it into cubes today. And now I don't have any heat on in my pot or anything right now. We'll cut that on once we get it all in there. I've never personally done this. What they say you can do is you can go to these butcher shops and things like that, ask for leaf fat. A lot of times, this is not sent back with the pig. So a lot of these butcher shops have extra. Now, when it comes deer season, a lot of butcher shops sell out of it because people mix this in with like their deer burger and their deer sausage and things like that. So what you're going to get when you go and buy it, though, I don't know how it looks from butcher shops, but this has been cooled and chilled. You get a big old chunk of fat there. You may have some meat pieces in it, but we're going to cut those out. These little tiny pieces of meat like that right there, I don't worry about them. That actually makes pretty good cracklings with a little streak of lean in it like that. I've got a pretty good chunk of meat in it right here on the end. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I'm actually just going to, that's a pretty good streak of lean, so I'm probably just going to save that over to the side, and I will cut that up and put it in with my canned tenderloin I'm going to do here in a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is cut my heat on low. On this gas stove, this particular eye gets a little extra hotter than normal low. So once this starts rendering just a little bit and gets kind of hot, warms up, I'm going to actually scoot it back to a cooler eye. Just with this stove, in my experience, it cooks it a little bit too fast on the hottest eye, even on low. So my lard is more brown, which I don't want, because if it turns brown, it's still edible. You can still use it, but I've noticed that it's has more of a porky flavor instead of just pretty much no flavor at all. You'll want to come give this a stir about every 5 or 10 minutes when you're first starting off. But that water on the bottom does help a lot to keep it from sticking. If I didn't have the water on the bottom, I would probably be stirring it every couple of minutes, just at least until some of it rendered enough to have some grease on the bottom. And we'll have us some beautiful lard probably here in a couple hours. Alright, the next thing I gotta do is can my tenderloin. So y'all, you gotta forgive us. First pig of the year, when the pig was getting cut in half, we had a little boo-boo. You can see that nice slice down through the tenderloin there. So instead of slicing this and freezing it like we usually do, I'm gonna actually can this one. I usually do can at least one tenderloin this time of year. So this is gonna be the one I'm gonna can. I love the canned pork. Use it a lot in soups. Makes the best pork tacos. But the first thing I'm gonna do is cut this thing in half and make it a little easier to manage here. If you let it cool, chill out a little bit, so much easier to work with. So this has gotten good and cold. So all I'm gonna do is cube this up and put it in my jars, as simple as that. I know a lot of people are like set back by canned meat, but once you try it, figure out ways to use it. Oh my goodness, you talk about convenience foods. Canned meat is the ultimate convenience food, because you can have you a nice meal prepared in no time, because once we process this, the meat's already cooked. You just pretty much warm it up and season it and do what you want to with it. There ain't no thawing out, cooking it ahead of time, nothing like that. And I've already cubed up my little pieces that was in my leaf fat and put in that jar. But I just do some decent little size cubes, like that right there. My lard is cooking down real nice. I've already moved it to the cooler eye. But you can see now it's kind of goopy looking. It's all warming up. And from this point, you literally just leave it on your oven's lowest setting and let it slowly cook down. Don't be in a hurry with this process, or you may not be 100% pleased with your final product. So make sure you've got some time to let it just take its time and work down. And when you're doing meat, don't be afraid to kind of like stuff it down in your jar. You don't have to pack it loosely because it's going to cook down during the canning process. Alright, I got all my meat cut up and into my jars. Would y'all believe it that I literally had exactly 10 pints worth of meat. It's funny how things like that work out sometimes. To each pint, we're going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. I put no liquid in my meat when I'm canning my meat. It will make its own broth. Now, it won't fill up the entire jar with its own broth, but I have done it both ways. Years ago, I tried putting water in it. Liked it a lot better with no water and just let it make its own juices. Now, I have seen some people do like bouillon cubes instead of salt. You can do that. That makes some really tasty broth in with your meat, but just the salt and the meat tastes delicious by itself. We're going in a pressure canner, so we're not going to crank those down too tight. You're going to want to turn it till it starts turning by itself, just like that. That's tight as you want to get it. Don't crank them down. You'll buckle up your lids. I have done it. Sometimes I always seem to have to learn lessons the hard way. Now we're going to put our jars down in our canner. I've already got my water in the bottom. Remember, this meat was cold, so cold jars go into a cold canner. That way everything heats up at the same time and there's no shock to your glass or anything like that. There they are. So we're going to let our pork meat go under 10 pounds of pressure for an hour and 15 minutes, and then it'll be done, and I'll show y'all what that looks like. The next thing I need to do is get me another little pot going here. I've got some chicken thighs thawing out. That's what I'm going to make my chicken stew with. To make chicken stew, you really want to start off with a good chicken broth. You don't have to, but I like to. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually just going to boil those thighs for 2 or 3 hours. Just on a slow simmer. I say boil. On a slow simmer, let it make a real good chicken broth to have for my chicken stew. Now these are chicken thighs from chickens that we raised here. We usually raise a batch or 2 of meat birds every year. That's what these come from. Now I'm not going to debone these thighs just yet, because I want those bones in there for my chicken broth. So for my chicken broth, I'm just going to throw in some black pepper and quite a bit of salt. A little onion powder too. I'm just going to let those simmer for 2 or 3 hours. I want to show y'all up close to the lard. So we're getting pretty close to the 2-hour mark. How long this has been working here. We're not done yet. Our cracklings have not turned brown, but we're getting there. We won't have much longer now. So my lard is about as done as I want it to get. So I'm going to switch places with these 2 pots here. But my cracklings are starting to brown. See there? And that right there is usually about as far as I let it go. And that's just kind of personal preference. I find that if I let them get super brown, my lard's more porky. So I let them go to, like I said, about like that. So the next thing we're going to do, and I do apologize that y'all are going to have to listen to this canner in the background. I know it's loud, but just real life, y'all. I had time to do both of these things and then killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So anyways, the key to having good lard, clean lard that keeps for a long time, you know, at room temperature, is that it needs to be clean. You need to filter out any little pieces that may be in there. The cleaner and the better it's filtered, the longer it's going to keep for you. I have eaten lard that is 2 years old, that is not the least little bit porky. If it's gone rancid, I'm going to tell y'all, you can definitely tell it. I mean, if you smell of it and it stinks real bad, it ain't no good. Because once it's gone rancid, believe me, you can tell. But, like I said, the key is we're going to filter this really well. So to do that, this is just a funnel. And I have one of these little wire, I don't know what they're called, little filter things. And I lay a paper towel in it. Now, you can use a cheesecloth too, but I've always just used a paper towel. And I'm going to get as close to my little pot here as I can get. I don't know if we're going to get quite 4 quarts. We'll just see. Be very careful doing this. Just remember, you're working with hot grease, so... And this is a slow process. This part right here is what's going to take you the longest. But it's worth it in the long run because your lard's going to keep a whole lot better and you're going to have a lot better product. So that's what we're going to do. Now y'all notice how beautiful and crystal clear this is. This is what I'm looking for. Sometimes you do it and it's brown. Maybe still kind of see-through, but it'll be a dark brown. Like I said, that's okay. It's just, you're gonna notice a really, really porky taste if you let it get like that. So now I crank down on my lid. Lard is shelf stable. You ain't got to can it. If this doesn't seal, the lard will still be fine at room temperature. Most of the time though, it's so hot it just seals itself anyway. So we'll just repeat that again on the next one. Now this is a really good use for if you have any old mayonnaise jars like the glass ones. A lot of people try to sell these as like canning jars. They're not canning jars. I don't like to pressure can in them because the glass is not as thick as your regular actual canning jars and they can bust. So I don't like to take that chance. But I do put my lard in them, and I've got a ton of them that I've collected through the years. So we're just going to keep on and keeping on. And one thing to remember, make sure you wash your jars before you do this too. But wash them ahead of time. Give them plenty of time to dry. If there's any water left in them, again, that moisture could make your lard go rancid. If there is moisture left in the jar, any water. As early in the day as it is, y'all might get to see how white it is. And it may be completely cool by tonight. I'm not sure. It may be in the morning. It's pretty warm in here right now with all these goings on I got doing here. So once you make lard a few times and get the feeling for it, you know, what you're looking for and everything, it'll become second nature. I've made it so many times I could about do this with my eyes closed, I feel like. And I try my best to make enough to last me till the following year. So I'll do this several times this winter. And usually I have enough to last me. I've got probably 4 quarts left from last year. So I'll use up those first. And then start opening these. So I want to show y'all here. You can see in my paper towel what I've filtered out. These are part of the little tiny cracklings, but look in the bottom of that spoon. If I wasn't filtering this through that paper towel, a lot of those little crumbs of cracklings, they're so tiny, they would come through and settle to the bottom. And that will give you some porky lard. So now what's left is these beautiful brown cracklings. I usually will freeze a few servings full. I like to make some crackling cornbread every once in a while. And hopefully one of these days I'll show you how I do that. But I'm going to let these cool off completely. I'll stick them in a freezer bag and stick them in the freezer. And I ended up getting 3 quarts of this fine looking lard here. So that's 3 quarts down and who knows how many to go. My canner should be done here in just a few minutes. So what I'll do is I'll let that cool completely, let the pressure come down, and then we'll open it up and see what that looks like. Now for our chicken stew, I'm gonna go ahead and get my thighs out of here so I can pick the meat off of them. Got some pretty good looking broth there. Let that cool just a minute. I'm gonna pour my broth into a bigger pot. I would have originally used this bigger pot, but I didn't have enough room with all my other pots, so see my good looking chicken broth there? It looks great. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this heat on low, and we're gonna get us about a half stick of butter. That's probably a quart of broth if I had to guess. So I'm going to go ahead and let that butter melt. While it's melting, my canner has completely cooled and took a little weight off, and I've let it sit here for a little bit. So we're going to get this meat out, and I'm going to show y'all what that looks like. So I'm going to show y'all up close of that right there. See there? There's our canned pork. Now the way you saw me do this pork, I mean any deer meat, beef, deer meat, anything like that, you do it this exact same way. Exactly how you saw me do it here. But see all that beautiful broth that it made? We don't want to water that down with water. We don't want to do that. But sometimes you'll get it like this and it won't be completely covered, but that's okay. Your meat's still going to be just fine. I got 5 or 10 easy meals right there. A very easy something, especially like fix for lunch, something quick. That's one reason I do them in pints, because sometimes we'll do that for lunch. And these little pints are just easier. Some of them do have some grease layers, and you'll see when they cool, they'll have a white layer of fat on top of them, which is completely normal for pork, especially since I left that fat layer on the tenderloin. While my broth is heating up, I'm going to go ahead and debone my chicken here. Should be very tender as long as it cooked, and it is. Go ahead and get that old skin off of it too. I'll put that in my chicken stew. And the way I like to do my chicken for my chicken stew is just chop it up in pretty small pieces. We like it better chopped like that than actually like shredded. So that's just a personal preference. So once that's chopped up, I don't know, pretty small little pieces, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my broth over here. Now, what I like to do instead of just dumping all this chicken in there is I do go through and I kind of feel to make sure I didn't leave out any little pieces of bone or anything like that. It's always a little bit of a fear of mine. Just gonna give that a little stir. So now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make us a little slurry to thicken this up with flour and milk. So I'm gonna start off with around 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. And now I'm gonna slowly add in some milk. Always add your liquid to the flour, not the flour to the liquid when you're making something like this. It just mixes up much better and kind of helps you from having lumps. So I just always start off with just a little milk. And it'll get thick, which is what I want. It'll kind of look like biscuit dough. See there? So now we want to thin that on out. A little milk at a time. I want to get it pourable. I want it to be thin enough that I can just pour it in there. So pour that in. Go on ahead and give that a good stir, because that flour at first, it'll like try to sink to the bottom. We want it to bind all that butter and fat that's in there. You can kind of see that's thickening up a little bit there. Now, some people like to put like chopped onions in their chicken stew or stuff like that. That's all totally up to you. I'm gonna add actually just a little more, just plain old milk. There we go. Add any seasoning you want. Sometimes I like to add the Italian seasoning. Sometimes just salt and pepper and a little onion powder. Tonight I'm gonna add some of this here. I'm also going to add a little more black pepper. We really like a lot of black pepper in ours. And if you're making this and you taste it and it's good, but it tastes like it's missing something, usually it's missing salt. Add you a little more salt and then taste it again. Just because it does have so much flour in it, it's just like gravy. You just got to taste it. If it's missing something, it's usually salt. I'm going to give it a taste and see if it needs anything. Oh, that's, ooh-wee, that is wonderful. Wonderful, that is very good. Very, very good. Actually, could stand maybe a tad more salt. And a tad more milk. Kind of one of those things, y'all. If it's thicker than you want, add more milk. If it's thinner than you want, add more of your milk flour mixture there. Till it gets to the consistency you're looking for. And it's just real important where that thickener is in there that you pretty much, you keep it stirred while the heat's on. Just so none of the chicken pieces or the flour or nothing tries to stick to the bottom. You don't want to scorch it. It's not something you can like walk away and leave. But it's something you can fix very quickly because it's about done and I've been working on it for about 10 or 15 minutes. Besides, you know, boiling the chicken and stuff. But if you already have canned chicken broth, frozen chicken broth, you ain't got to do all that. I just happen to not have none right now. So whenever I cook something that calls for chicken broth, I've got to kind of make me some ahead of time at this moment. So you can eat chicken stew a couple of different ways. A lot of people like to just crumble up crackers or dip crackers in it and eat it. I like to put me a piece of loaf bread in the bottom of my bowl and scoop me out some chicken stew right over top of that. And it sure don't get no better than that right there, especially on a cold, windy day. Well, y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed today's video. I guess that's going to about wrap it up. It was a productive day. I got my lard made and my meat canned. But anyways, guys, till we see y'all in the next one, y'all have a good one.